So I'd like for this afternoon session, the meditation session, to be focusing on the distinctive qualities of awareness and of space, which are profoundly related but not identical. Yeah? And we'll do this in a very practical way, completely experiential way. So the words are just to guide us into experience and bring greater clarity to experience, but not to set us into a whole cogitative trip, spinning out in ideation. I'd like for us to begin the silent session. It will be silent once we've begun. I'd like to begin this with the full body awareness, mindfulness of breathing. And I'd like to suggest an analogy I find very useful. And that is, when we do this, then we are letting our awareness, in a manner of speaking, fill the space of the body. We're mindfully present throughout the entire space. So the space is illuminating the entire space, the somatic field, right? It's all clear? But now, the space itself, the somatic space, and the sensations that arise within it are non-conceptual. Concepts have reference. So when I think of Diana, then, oh yeah, she's over there. It's just a thought. It's just a sound, Diana. But it's a meaningful thought, it's a meaningful name, and it refers to the woman here, correct? So it has a referent. So when I think Diana, I don't just think, oh, sound. Like Vienna, Vienna. No, meaningful, so it has a referent, yeah? And so that's, of course, the nature of concepts and words. They have reference, they're meaningful, they're semantic, yeah? But the sensations arising, earth, water, fire, air, as well as the feelings arising, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, they have no referent. They're not about something else. They're inarticulate. They're non-conceptual. And so as you let your awareness fill the space, you're filling the space in which events are arising, but they have no referent. They have no referent. That's important. So you're letting your awareness be filled with or permeate a space that is non-conceptual. A lot of stuff happens, experiences, feelings, sensations, but they're not conceptual. They have no reference. They're not about something else, so they don't naturally or inevitably trigger conceptualization about something other than themselves. If I think Diana, that immediately just brings me to Diana. I only know one. Oh, over there, yeah. It triggers that. And then how many times have I met her, and what was the last conversation? Is she really a wimp, or was I kidding? Triggers thoughts. Right? The idea here is to let your awareness be filling a space that is quiet, that doesn't talk. It's non-conceptual, and it does not articulate. Right? The metaphor I like a lot, is like having a vial or a glass vial like that, just so like a bottle, filling it full of water to the brim, and then using a pump to forcefully suck out all the water. And what do you have left in that jar when you've sucked out all the water?
Empty space.
Yeah, empty space, a vacuum. A vacuum, right? Fill the space of your awareness with inarticulate sensations, and then direct it elsewhere. Suck out all the tactile sensations, and attend to a space that's empty, as you redirect from the somatic to the mental. It's filled with the non-conceptual sensations, and then turn to the space of the mind, in which there are no somatic sensations. They're not somatic. There's no earth element in mind. There's no water element, and so forth and so on. So then direct it to that space where you've already emptied out the space to which you've been directing your awareness. You're getting a fresh start. Getting a fresh start as you attend to it, then you have a better chance of actually observing that space. Right? If the space you're attending to is from the very beginning filled with gnats and flies, and they're bugging you, the thoughts, the memories, the desires, and oh man, my mind's such a mess, my mind's so cluttered, my mind's so agitated, it's so distracted, I can't stand it. Well, that's like a room full of flies and gnats, yuck. So go to a space where there are no flies, where there's just non-articulate, non-conceptual sensations arising. Fill it with that, then suck all of that out, direct it at the space of the mind. So you're starting from scratch, you're starting from a clean slate. Now, thoughts will arise, but at least you're not overwhelmed by them. They'll arise here, and then there's an interval. And another thought arises. It's an interval. Then, for the second half of the session, the second 2/3, whatever you like, I'm going to wrap up. I call this front-loading the meditation session. So I'm talking about it now, so I won't need to talk about it and draw you into multitasking, back and forth to meditation to me. Don't want that. That's not optimal. And so then when you go to the practice, then I'm encouraging, here's the instruction for the practice. When you shift to the second phase, whether it's the second half, second 2/3, second, the last 3/4, whatever, it's your choice, then take a special interest in the intervals between the thoughts. What's left over? There was a thought, and now there's no thought. There was an appearance, now there's no appearance. And now look at that. What's left over when the appearance has faded away, as you remain single-pointedly on the space of the mind, not wandering off to the visual, auditory, and so on. And now I'll make it easier. I know I put you on a tough spot this morning, because you're not, none of us, unless you've done this before, of course. This is that kind of in grilling or interrogation I gave you this morning. You're not accustomed to that, right? And also, many of you have never been exposed to Tibetan debate before. That could be a little bit unsettling. We'll do it 2 or 3 times, then you'll get the hang of it, and you also know the mood of it. That's the most important, more important than anything else. This is not somebody winning or losing, somebody dominating, somebody being intimidated. If you thought that, then you missed the whole show. You saw a show I was never showing. But here, now the instruction. I'm going to make it easier for you. Before I said, describe what you saw, right? And now I'm going to give you a little bit more to work with. Because I'm going to pose questions here that if you ask them of awareness, you might respond, that's a categorical error. That question doesn't make any sense, right? So I'm going to suggest one fundamental difference between space and awareness. Space by nature, which is by the very meaning of space in English or any other translation into other language, space implies extension. If you have a point, a dot with no spatial dimension, right? Just, like a mathematical point. You say, how big is it? Well, the answer is, it's not big at all. It has no spatial extension. Space has extension. Space has extension. If doesn't have extension, it's just not space, right? So that's for starters. Does awareness have extension? Don't think so. It doesn't make any sense. It's a categorical error. It's like saying, how big is justice? Is it spherical? Is it flat? Is it justice? And you're saying, it's a categorical error. The question doesn't make any sense. Right? Justice does occur. We can witness it. We can observe when it doesn't happen. But to say how big is it, or the extension of it, doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to speak of the spatial extension of awareness. How big is it? Right? So there's the first one. Okay, now we have something, now we have the platform to ask further questions. If we all agree there, and I think, what's the debate? Space has extension, otherwise it's not space, right? Then we can start asking questions. These are the ones I invite you to ask of your experience and not just get into cogitation and think out the right answers, as like a philosopher might write, do research and write a paper. So, all right, we're going to start here. Space has extension, awareness doesn't. Okay, good. Here are simple questions. Okay, extension. There's 2-dimensional extension, there's 3-dimensional. A screen in a movie theater is 2-dimensional. And has space. It's this wide and this high. Finished. But a 3D movie, or virtual reality, that also has extension, but 3-dimensional extension. Okay, so space of mind, is it 2D or 3D? That's a simple question. Okay? That's an answerable question. There's the first one. Second one, space of the mind, does it have color? And I'm going to suggest there are 2 real options. Nobody's really going to think purple, although it does once in a while come up. But I'm going to say wrong. But there are 2 that are viable that you might really seriously consider. One is black. The space of the mind is black, which frankly is a color. It's a very dark color, a bit darker than brown. It's color. And the other one is transparent. So may as well just kind of cut to the chase. Is the space of the mind black, like a pitch black room, or is it transparent, which is not black at all? Transparent is not black. And both of those questions are meaningful questions. Okay? So there's the second one. Now when we speak of spatial extension, we can ask two-dimensional, three-dimensional, but if we speak of extension, we can also ask, well, okay, does it have a shape? Is it spherical? The sphere of the mind? Is it actually spherical, like a balloon? Is it cube? Is it tetrahedral? Have a shape? There's a third one. And as soon as we're talking about shape, you can ask, does it have a center? Maybe in the center of your head, or in your body, or in front of you. Does it have a center? And does it have a periphery? A center or periphery? Like that. Those are meaningful questions. As soon as we know we're talking about something that has extension, these are not meaningless questions. It is not a categorical error. To ask whether awareness has a center or periphery is kind of odd. Ask whether awareness has a shape, that's odd, right? Awareness has a color? Who thinks it has a color? Who even thinks it's black? It's a categorical error. So we now see there are a whole bunch of characteristics here that are very meaningful to ask about space, which just are not meaningful to ask about awareness. So they can't be the same. Okay? So be prepared to report. Okay? But now I've given you something much more precise, specific, for which you can come up with a definitive answer. These are not some great koan that you have to be enlightened to realize. Flat or three-dimensional, that's pretty straightforward. Okay? These are answerable questions. But let your experience answer them for you, rather than being very clever and coming up with what you think is the right answer. Okay? Good. Let's do it. 24 minutes silence.